Hi everyone, my name is Taras and today I'll be taking the role of an interviewee.
Hi everyone, my name is Gayatri. Today I'm going to be playing the role of an interviewer.
And we're going to run a classic case interview for you. As the structure is very simple, our lovely interviewer is going to read the prompt and then I'm going to ask a few clarifying questions, take a couple of minutes to structure my thoughts and present a case interview framework for the first main question. Then Gayatri is going to run a few follow-up questions, which I'll be expected to solve on the spot. And we'll conclude with a summary and final recommendations for this particular case. Let's get started.
Our client, a global luxury hotel chain, is evaluating the feasibility of entering the luxury accommodations market in a new city. The hotel chain is considering two options for the market entry: establishing a standalone luxury resort or developing a mixed-use resort that offers both luxury and standard accommodations. The CEO of the hotel company has hired you to provide a few recommendations on the feasibility of both options. What should the CEO prioritize while evaluating the feasibility of entering this market for both potential new accommodations?
All right, before I ask a few clarifying questions, let me just summarize the case to make sure that I captured all the information correctly. So our client is a CEO of a global luxury hotel chain and they are looking to enter a new city market. They're considering two options: either construct a standalone luxury-only hotel or to create a more mixed-use property where there's going to be both luxury options and standard options. We need to evaluate the feasibility for both cases and potentially provide recommendations which one is a better fit. Is that a correct summary?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can I ask what type of city is that? The population, the type of the market?
It's a rapidly developing city.
Right. And when we evaluate our project, is there any timeline that I should take into consideration?
There is no timeline.
Okay. Besides financial profitability, is there any other considerations that I need to look for?
Profitability is their primary concern, but you're welcome to consider other factors.
Got it. And what is our competition in this city, both for luxury hotel business and for normal hotels?
The luxury accommodation market in the city is quite limited.
Got it. Do we have any information about normal hotels?
No.
Okay, got it. All right, is that okay if I take a couple of minutes and structure my thoughts?
Sure.
After the prompt, the base case scenario is that if you have a couple of very good questions that you would like to ask on the spot. This is probably some of the most important minutes of the case interview because it is crucial for you to align on the type of the problem that you've been asked. This is why I'm rehearsing the case that I just heard. This time you'll be writing it down. If you have any numbers or any key factors playing all, such as who are the stakeholders in this particular endeavor, what is the timeline, what is the key issues that we need to consider, these are usually the type of questions that I will ask after I hear the prompt. All right, I think I'm ready to talk a little bit about my framework. So there are 5 main things I would like to talk about: demand in the market for our potential clients, the revenue breakdown for both options, the cost breakdown for both options, the strategic fit with our overall hotel brand, and then I will briefly mention about the key risks that we also need to consider. Sounds good?
Yep.
Okay, great. So for market demand, we need to identify potential customers who will be using our luxury hotels in the first place. Here, just to be simple, I separate it into 2.5 brackets. First, there are domestic clients, so there are people who live in the city and its proximity. We're going to look at the frequency of their vacations. We're going to look at the customer loyalty for already existing spots, Airbnb, other luxury hotels, and is there even in the culture for them to use this type of services in the first place. The second are non-domestic visitors, which includes tourists and people traveling for business purposes. I think it's important to consider both groups because it will allow us to understand this type of market a little bit better. Here we're going to look at the number of visitors, how many of them are attracted to luxury offerings in the first place. Is the city popular? among the tourists? Is it popular among business travelers? The second bracket would be to look at the revenue opportunity. So here, again, separating it to two main categories is the revenue that comes from room booking. Here we're going to look at the average daily rate per occupied room for every type of room that exists within our hotels, and occupancy rate per year, because it's going to highly vary from during top peak season and off season. And then I would like to look at supplementary services, because they are typically still an important consideration when we're talking about the revenue streams for a hotel. So here's four main groups. Food and beverages services. So that is our restaurants, cafes, room services such as minibars and normal bars as well. Wellness and recreation, which is spa services, fitness centers. A lot of the times these are included in the amenities of a hotel, especially when we're talking about luxury option, but there are always some extra opportunities such as personal massages that will probably cost you a little bit extra. Third is event hosting and banquet facilities. So any weddings, corporate events, conferences, seminars, these are the types of events that are usually attracted by the luxury accommodations, especially if there's not many options in the city. And finally, the last one is any special retail amenities. So that would be gift shops, merchandise, tours, right? Anything that we can provide extra, or we can franchise to other businesses to use some of our facilities that we can collect revenue from. Third part would be an overview of our breakdown of our costs. Again, two types of costs. There's a one-time costs, which will be only incurring in the first couple of years of us starting our business. So it'll be the cost of construction, the cost of land acquisition, and any legal expenses such as getting permits, lawyers, anything to make the hotel start running. The second is our annual cost, which is basically an operational expenses, anything that we are expected to pay annually, semi-annually, or something like that. So the main brackets would be salaries for staff, utilities for light, water, and other amenities, depreciation and accommodation of our furniture, equipment that we purchased, taxes for both types of potential accommodations, if we want to pay them, and any legal expenses such as the payments for compliance, insurance, and so on. The fourth part would be strategic fit and alignment with our bigger brand. Would we like to reinforce the image of us being a luxury-only brand, or do we want to expand to a wider audience? Both options are feasible, but it's a very different strategy, so you need to make sure that the opening of this specific luxury hotel aligns with a wider strategy of our big business. And finally, last fifth part, I would like to consider key risks. So three main buckets here is economic risks, which is market volatility. How much does it vary based on the city and based on the luxury demand within this particular region? Regulatory risks, which is the second bracket, so any restrictions to foreign businesses, any zoning laws, any tax implications, any currency risks, basically how hard it is to make business within this specific region. And lastly, the competition. I would like to look at the level competition both in the luxury market and in non-luxury market, considering what other options do people have when they come to the city and how loyal they are to the alternatives that exist on the market. So to summarize, 5 main groups. There's market demand by potential customers. There's a revenue breakdown for both options. There's a cost overview, which is separated into one-time costs and operational expenses. There's a strategic fit and brand positioning with our overall brand. And there are 3 key risks: economic, regulatory, and compliance. These 5 things I would like to look for.
Okay, moving on. How would you estimate the annual market demand for luxury hotel rooms by number of guests?
Okay, just give me a sec. BCG will wait. Annual market demand for luxury hotels by the number of guests. Okay, couple of questions. So do we have any information about the number of locals who use luxury accommodations?
1% of the city of 10 million.
Okay. And do we have information about non-locals? How many of them are traveling to our, town?
18 million of tourists per year.
Okay. And any information about what number of them use specifically luxury accommodations?
5% of them.
5%. Great. And besides tourists and locals, is there any other groups that you would like me to consider when we talk about the number of guests?
No.
Okay. Is any important other considerations that you think I might missed?
Assume everyone uses hotels on average once a year.
Okay, great. Once per year. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. We're going to first look at the two main market segments that we have identified. This is domestic market, and then this is non-domestic market. So for domestic market, we're going to look at the population size that you mentioned, 10 million, and we're going to multiply this number, but with a percentage of people who use luxury accommodations. So 10 million multiplied by 1% is 100,000 local people who potentially can use luxury accommodations. Moving to the non-domestic market, we identified that 18 million people are tourists for this particular region, but only 5% of them use luxury accommodations or potential clients for luxury accommodations. So we're going to take in 18 million multiplied by 5%, identifying 900,000 people are going to be the non-domestic people who are going to be potentially using luxury accommodations. Adding these numbers together, 100,000 plus 900,000, we get a beautiful number of 1 million, which is approximately the size of the market for luxury accommodation. A couple of things to point out that I would like to point out is that 90% of our potential customers base is international, which is an important consideration when we're considering what type of property to build. And this is a pretty significant market, considering that there's no real competition in the city. So by only capturing 10% of the market, which is going to be 100,000 potential customers for our property, which is a huge number. So again, these are relatively simple calculations. You just keep reinforcing it to the interviewer, and while you're thinking on the spot of how to solve that, it's also very nice in the end to say a couple of things from yourself, demonstrating your ability to think outside of a given question, but still providing relevant recommendation that will be useful if this was a real-time scenario and you were talking to an actual client.
Okay, moving on. Next question. What are the projected revenue and cost structures for the standalone luxury resort and the mixed-use luxury resort?
Okay, great. Do we have information about the revenue that we expected to bring, let's say per room for every type?
So the average daily rate per room for standalone is $400 per night. For mixed luxury room is $300 per night, and for mixed standard room is $150 per night.
Okay, so we have $400 per night in a luxury only room, and then for the mixed one, $300 for a luxury room and $150 for a standard room. What about the occupancy rate? How many days on average we expect an average room to be occupied?
250 days per year for both options.
Both options, okay. So around 70% in the 365 days a year. What is the size of a hotel in both cases?
300 rooms in each.
300 rooms in each. And in the mixed one, is that separated 50-50?
No, there's 100 luxury rooms and 200 standard rooms.
Got it. 100 luxury rooms and 200 standard rooms. Okay, now let me ask you a few questions about the costs. Any information that we have about potential cost breakdown?
So the fixed cost for standalone is 10 million, and for mixed is 8 million. The variable cost is 100 per occupied room in standalone, and in the mixed it's $80 for luxury and $50 for standard. Okay,
so we separate into fixed and variable. For the fixed, it's 10 million for a standalone option, a little bit less expensive in the mixed one, makes sense, 8 million for fixed costs. In the variable costs, we are spending $100 per occupied room per night. And then in the mixed use, we're spending $80 in the luxury room and $50 for a normal room.
Yeah.
What about the construction costs?
You don't need that.
Okay. And what about any potential revenue from non-room occupied services? So any other extra services that we mentioned?
They're same for both the options.
Got it. Okay. If they're same for if they are same for both options, we can for now exclude them. All right, let's look at the standalone luxury only option, because it's a little bit easier to calculate at first. So I'm going to first look at the profit per night of an occupied room, that we're going to calculate an annual profit by multiplying this number by the number of days an average room is occupied and the number of rooms. Then we're going to take into consideration the fixed costs, which will going to bring us a net profit. So we are earning $400 per occupied room, but we're also spending $100 per running an occupied room per night, which brings us a net profit of $300 per occupied room per night. So now let's look at the annual consideration. We have 250 days per year an average room is occupied, and there are 300 rooms within the luxury accommodation. So we're multiplying an average profit per room of 300 by an average number of rooms, by the number of rooms, 300 again, and by the number of days an average room is occupied, 250. 300 by 300 is 90,000, and then 90,000 multiplied by 250 is 9 million plus 9 million plus 4.5, which brings us to 22.5 million a profit before fixed costs. Our fixed costs are 10 million, so we're going to subtract this number, 22.5 minus 10, brings us to a profit of $12.5 million per year for a luxury-only accommodation. Now for a mixed-use property, I'm going to use the same logic. I'm going to just calculate it separately for luxury rooms and for standard rooms. So for luxury rooms, we are looking at the profit of $300 per night, and we're spending $80 per occupied room per night. So with $220, 300 minus 80 for an occupied room in a luxury mixed-use property. For a standard room, the numbers are $150 per occupied room in revenue and $50 in costs, which brings us to $100 of net profit per occupied room per night. So coming back to luxury rooms, we have again three numbers. $220 is our profit per room. We are occupied the same number, 250 days per year, and there are 100 luxury rooms. So I'm going to multiply 250 days per 100 rooms, which brings us to 25,000 multiplied by $220. So that's 2,200,000 plus 2,200,000 plus 100,000, separated into 100, 120, which brings us to $5.5 million of profit for luxury rooms. And then using the same logic for standard rooms, we have again three numbers: 200 rooms, 250 days in occupied, and $100 of profit. So 200 by 100 is 20,000 multiplied by 250 days open is going to bring us to a number of 5 million. So we add these two numbers together, 5 million and 5.5 million. We're going to give us a profit of 10.5 million, excluding fixed costs. We mentioned that the fixed cost is 8 million, so 10.5 million minus 8 million brings us a net final profit for a mixed-use property of 2.5 million. So to summarize what we have found, we have two numbers now. The profit for a luxury-only option is 12.5 million. The profit for a mixed-use property is 2.5 million. So it's $10 million less, and the luxury-only option is 5 times or 500% more profitable than our mixed option, which is a great margin to have. But at the same time, just a small consideration: because of higher fixed costs, luxury-only option will be a little bit more risky, but it's only 20% more in terms of a fixed cost. So looking at this, one option makes more sense immediately.
Okay. Final question. Given the financials, customer segments, and operational risks, which model would you recommend and why?
Right. So looking at the financials and looking at other factors, I think standalone luxury-only option would definitely make more sense. As I mentioned, it's 5 times more profitable, and it also seems to align more with our overall brand as being a luxury only or primarily luxury hotel type of business. Considering that there are no other luxury amenities existing in the city. We calculated that just capturing 10% of the market would brings us a potential customer base of 100,000 people. And considering that this option is also more profitable, I think it makes sense for us to keep a luxury-only accommodation for this city.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the case interview.
Thank you very much.